Welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. We are back today with Game 2 of Foundations with some brand new commanders. Let's hop right into it and see what everybody brought. Up first is Ethan on new Niv-Mizzet. This one's a visionary. This Is It Spellslinger deck cares a lot about non-combat damage. It uses it in conjunction with Niv-Mizzet to gain a ton of card advantage and chip its opponents to death. Up next is Kellan on Evereth, Viceroy of Plunder. This is a Rakdos deck that mixes artifacts and aristocrats. It's got a sack outlet in the command zone and it loves to make treasures too. Evereth plans to beat everyone down and drain them. Next we got Jason on Neerdiv, Devious Diver. This mono blue deck is all about milling yourself until you're in a position to where you can mill all of your opponents out. You know it's got a ton of tap and untap shenanigans too. And last but not least, we have Seth on Kellan, Planner Trailblazer. This rootin' tootin' mono red deck wants to make Kellan a cowboy as quick as possible, then beef him up and beat his opponents down with commander damage and get a few extra cards off the exile effect. We're about to get into that gameplay, but before that, time for a cardinal sin of YouTube. Hey guys, only about 30% of you are subscribed to us, and I want to make one thing clear. We are really appreciative of every single view each one of you gives us. But if you want to stay up to date with all of our newest content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications. We're also extremely thankful for all of our patrons. Thank you all so much. We're also partnered with Dragon Shield. They make excellent accessories to go with your MTG products. So be sure to use code SMOOTH5 at checkout for 5% off your entire order. Now let's hop into that game. Looks like Ethan wins the die roll. He'll start off with a command tower and pass to Caden. And yeah, you saw that legendary opening hand. He'll play command tower and use it to cast a Soul Ring, which he'll tap for 2 to cast a Felwar Stone, and pass to Seth. And Seth says, hey, I've got a turn 1 play too. He'll play a Mountain, cast Kellan, and then pass to Jason, who just plays tapped Mystic Sanctuary, and then he'll pass to Ethan. Let's see what turn 2 has in store for us. Ethan plays an Island, and then he'll cast Thermo Alchemist and pass to Caden, who will just play a basic Swamp, then cast Professional Facebreaker, and then pass to Seth, who plays another Mountain, then he'll cast his Arcane Signet, and he considers swinging, but he decides to just pass to Jason. Jason will play Survivor's Encampment, and then cast Lightning Greaves, and then pass. Ethan will just play another Island and pass. Oh boy, mana open from the blue deck. Caden will start off with another basic Swamp. Then he'll move to combat and hit Jason for 2, and make a treasure token. Then post-combat, he'll cast Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, and then pass to Seth, who plays another Mountain. Then he'll tap for 3, and he decides to go ahead and cast his Mithril Coat. ETB will attach to Kellan. He'll then cast Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. The turn is then passed to Jason, and he'll start off by bolting himself to the other side of Seagate Restoration. Then he'll cast Neerdiv, and equip her with Lightning Greaves, then move to combat and swing for 2 at Ethan. Becoming tap trigger, Jason has himself mill 2, and it hits Snapcaster Mage in an Island. Ethan blocks, and the turn is passed to him, where he'll stop on Instep and flash in Ophidian Eye onto his Thermo Alchemist. It resolves, then Ethan will activate the Alchemist to deal 1 to everybody, and he'll get to draw 3 cards. Now let's move to his turn, where he does it again. He'll then cast Strike at Rich, which untaps his Alchemist and makes him a treasure. He'll then activate to deal 3 and draw 3 again. He'll then play a City of Brass as land for turn, and then he'll just pass the turn.
I'm going to move to discard and discard an Omniscience, Niv-Mizzet Perun, Fire Diamond, Sky Diamond, Archmage of Runes, and then Brainstorm.
If that's what he just discarded, I don't even want to think about how gassed the 7 he kept are. Let's move to Caden's turn now, where for his crimes, Ethan now has to take 6 damage, and Caden will make a treasure. Then for 4 mana, Caden will cast Fel the Profane, targeting the Thermo Alchemist. Ethan will respond with a Bolt Bin, targeting the Fel the Profane. He intends to point it back at the Professional Facebreaker. A Thermo Alchemist untapped trigger goes on the stack, and Caden will respond to this with a Chaos Warp, attempting to warp it away. But the stack gets bigger. Ethan will pay 2 life to Gutshot Caden in the face, untapping his Thermo Alchemist. Then he'll activate it to ping everyone for 1 and draw 3. Now let's continue down the stack. Chaos Warp will resolve, and Thermo Alchemist is shuffled in. Chaos Warp will then flip Descent into Avernus straight to the battlefield. Fun! Bolt Ben then changes Fel the Profane over to Professional Facebreaker. Then with Fel still on the stack, Caden will sacrifice his treasure to exile the top card of his library, it's a Mountain, and then everything finally resolves. Caden will play that Mountain as land for turn, and then the turn is passed to Seth. He will start off with another basic Mountain. Then he'll pay 2 mana into Kellan to activate his first ability. This turns him into a Human Fairy Detective, and he gains his Exile ability. Then he'll activate Kellan's second ability, turning him into a Rogue as well, and also making him a 3/2 with Double Strike. Seth then moves to combat, and he'll swing 6 Commander at Ethan, and also an additional 2 at Ethan. Seth gets a few triggers off this. He exiles Ethan's Urabrask and makes a treasure, and thanks to Kellan having Double Strike, he now gets to exile 2 of his own cards. Those are Cathartic Pyre and Rose Cutthroat Raider. He can't cast either of those, so they'll stay in exile. Then the turn is passed to Jason. And of course, he'll start off by moving to combat and swinging for 2 Commander at Caden, who just takes it. Of course, the attack trigger will mill himself, and Jason will mill Counterspell and Codex Shredder. Then he'll play an island as land for turn and cast Malevolent Hermit. Then he'll cast Quiet Speculation, targeting himself, and he'll go find Deep Analysis, Silent Departure, and Dream Twist, and put them all to his graveyard. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and on upkeep, Descent to Avernus will get 2 Descent counters, meaning everyone takes 2 damage and creates 2 treasure tokens. Continuing on, Ethan will play a mountain as land for turn. Then he'll cast Kessig Flamebreather, and then the turn is passed to Caden. He'll start off with a Tainted Peak as land for turn. Then he'll move to combat and swing for 4 in the air at Ethan, who just takes it. Then post-combat, Caden casts Evereth. Then we see the Secret Pinnacle Monk text by actually casting Pinnacle Monk. You actually don't see that very often. ETB trigger returns Chaos Warp to Caden's hand. And then the turn's passed to Seth, who starts off with an Arena of Glory as land for turn. Then he'll cast a Mox Amber. Then Fear of Missing Out. And on ETB, he'll discard Sokenzen and draw a card. Seth will then move to combat and swing Kellan back over at Ethan and Ragavan over at Jason. No blocks and no responses from Ethan, and Jason blocks with his Malevolent Hermit. And Kellan will exile Hammer of Nazan and Containment Construct. He'll then cast the Hammer, and on ETB, he equips it to FOMO. He'll then cast the Containment Construct, and then pass the turn to Jason. Jason starts off by tapping his commander with Survivor's Encampment for a blue, and when it becomes tapped, he'll mill himself for 2. This hits Pongify and Lier. Then he'll cast Archmage of Runes, and the Lightning Greaves are moved over to it. Jason will then flash back Deep Analysis to draw 2 cards, and there's also an Archmage trigger, so a total of 3. Scratch that, Neerdiv also triggers, so he'll draw 4, and she also gets a 1/1 counter. The turn isn't passed, but Ethan will stay on end step to cast Price of Progress. First and foremost, there's a Flame Breather trigger. Then the Price of Progress will deal 4 damage to Ethan, 4 to Caden, 2 to Seth, and 8 to Jason. Oof, life totals be a-changin', and that train does not stop at the beginning of Ethan's turn, because Descent into Avernus will trigger again, dealing 4 to everybody and giving everyone 4 treasures. Ethan, and the rest of the table, knows that he's dead to his own Descent into Avernus next turn, so he's gotta try to win this turn or that's GG's. And brother, he's got the card that can do it. He'll cast O'Hare Ashenale. Then he'll drop Tectonic Hazard. Flame Breather trigger goes on the stack, and Caden will respond to this by attempting to Chaos Warp the O'Hare. Ethan will respond with a counter spell, and another Flame Breather trigger goes on the stack. Jason responds to this with a Slip Out the Back targeting the O'Hare. Ethan will respond to this with an Opt Flame Breather trigger. Let's resolve this trigger. Thanks to O'Hare Ashenale, does 4 to all of Ethan's opponents. The table then resolves Opt, and Ethan will put 1 to the bottom and draw a card. Continuing down the stack, Archmage of Runes trigger will resolve, and Jason will draw a card. Then O'Hare Ashenale will get a 1/1 counter and phases out. Alright, we're getting there. Flame Breather trigger resolves, then Chaos Warp is countered, another Flame Breather trigger resolves, and then finally the Tectonic Hazard will resolve, dealing 1 to everybody and their creatures. Ethan's not done yet though, because he'll cast an Expressive Iteration, dealing another damage to everybody. So he'll look at the top 3, 1 card goes to hand, 1 to bottom of the library, and he'll exile Mind Bomb, which he'll immediately cast. Ethan discards a land and goes to 1. Caden and Seth don't discard anything and take 3, and Jason will discard 3 islands. Ethan, who is now at 1, points out his Emergency Cyanide pill, and then he'll pass the turn to Caden, who starts off with a Luxury Suite as land for turn. Then he'll sacrifice his 3 treasure tokens to Evereth to give her 3 +1/+1 counters, and she'll gain lifelink. He'll then move to combat and swing for 9 in the air over at Seth, putting him down to 6, and Caden will gain 5. And at these life totals, that 5 commander doesn't matter, and I'm lazy, so I'm not marking it down. Caden will then pass the turn, and on end step, Seth flashes in Silver Shroud Costume. On ETB, he attaches it to Kellan. Now let's move to Seth's turn, where he does a lot of thinking. He's in a tough spot. He, along with Ethan and Jason, are dead to Descent into Avernus on Ethan's turn. Now Seth could very easily just move to combat and kill Ethan, and the Descent is gone. But that's pretty much handing the game over to Caden. He's at the highest life total, and with his flying attackers, he's got lethal on both Jason and Seth on his next turn. So Seth decides to go for an extremely rare EDH ending. He'll start by moving Hammer of Nazan over to Kellan, then he'll move to combat and swing a 5-power double strike and unblockable Kellan at Caden. And it connects, putting Caden down to 5. Both of the exile triggers hit 2 lands, and with Caden now at 5, this now sets up the opportunity for Descent into Avernus to draw the game. Post-combat, Seth will cast a Conspiracy Theorist, and then he'll just pass the turn to Jason. And now Jason's in a tough spot. He can kill Ethan if he wants to, but it leads to the same problem. Caden has lethal on both he and Seth. Jason does have a flashback bounce spell, but all Caden needs to do is destroy his commander or sacrifice it in some way, and Jason's just dead. So Jason just decides to play the game and see what happens. He'll start by milling himself for 3 by tapping his commander with his land, and none of those mills matter. So he'll then cast a Dream Twist, targeting himself to mill 3 more, and he has more triggers. He'll then cast a Glimpse of Freedom to draw a card, and he'll get an additional one off the Archmage. He'll then escape it by paying 3 mana and exiling 5 cards, and he has more draw triggers. He'll then cast a Paradise Mantle, and then he'll show the table a Penim's Aura. He doesn't cast it, he just wants everybody to know that if he had 1 more mana, he'd be able to mill everybody out. And that still wouldn't even have him win. Descent into Avernus happens on upkeep before the draw step, so it would still kill everybody before Ethan would lose. Jason decides to continue on and cast a Radical Idea. Draw trigger goes on the stack, and then he'll hold priority and offer you can't refuse it. So he'll draw another card and then create 2 more treasures. He'll then cast the Aura onto his commander and then pay 1 to untap her, and then the turn is passed to Ethan. We'll then move to Ethan's upkeep, where Descent into Avernus will trigger. 6 damage and 6 treasures are put onto the stack. And nobody responds, so they're all dead. It's a draw. This is officially the first draw game in SmoothBrainEDH history, so you're witnessing history, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, congratulations to everyone for winning, and also all of you, you suck for losing. Well, that was one hell of a game. In all my years of playing EDH, I don't think I've ever been in a draw game before. What about you viewers? I'm actually curious. Yeah, let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there, don't forget to let us know what you thought of the game overall, and also don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you all are enjoying Foundations. I know I am. It's a lot of fun to watch Standard now. Anyway, that's enough out of me for today. I hope you all have a smooth day.